So let's do some prayers first. We'll do first in this golden prayer book on page 73. We'll do the prayers before at the beginning of the teachings. First is a praise to Shakyamuni Buddha. 73. So visualize Shakyamuni Buddha in the space in front of you, the height of your forehead. It's one nature with your Guru. And then visualize around you all sentient beings, beginning with your father of this life on your right, and all your male relatives, and your mother of this life to your left, all your female relatives and friends. And then those whom you're most prone to become angry, irritated with, sitting directly in front of you, facing towards you. And then all the other beings of the 6 realms in human form, seated all around you. So imagine making prayers together with all these sentient beings who are the source of every happiness. Okay. To the founder, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. To the founder, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. To the founder, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. When, O supreme amongst humans, you were born on this earth, you paced out 7 strides and said, I am supreme in this world. To you who were wise then, I prostrate. With pure bodies, forms supremely pure, wisdom ocean like a golden mountain, fame that blazes in the 3 worlds, winner of the best, Lord, to you I prostrate. With the supreme signs, face like spotless moon, color like gold, to you I prostrate. Dust free like you, the 3 worlds are not, incomparably wise one, to you I prostrate. The Savior having great compassion, the Founder having all understanding, the field of merit with qualities like a vast ocean, to you the one gone to thusness I prostrate. The purity that frees one from attachment, the virtue that frees one from the lower realms, the one path, the sublime pure reality, to the Dharma that pacifies I prostrate. Those who are liberated and who also show the path to liberation, the holy field qualified with realizations, who are devoted to the moral precepts, to you the sublime community intending virtue I prostrate. Homage to the Supreme Buddha, homage to the Dharma refuge, homage to the great Sangha, to all 3 ever devout homage, to all worthy of respect, bound with bodies as many as all realms, atoms, and all aspects, with supreme faith I pay homage. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind thoroughly. This is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a visual aberration, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew or a bubble, a dream, a flash of lightning or a cloud. Seek and vision things as such. Through these merits may sentient beings attain the rank of all seen, subdue the foe of faults, and be delivered from samsara's ocean, perturbed by the waves of sickness, aging, and death. I prostrate to the Arya Triple Gem. Thus did I hear at one time the Bhagavan was dwelling on Mass of Vulture's Mountain and Rajgriha, together with a great community of monks and a great community of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Bhagavan was absorbed in the concentration on the categories of phenomena called profound perception. Also at that time, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara looked upon the very practice of the profound perfection of wisdom, and beheld those 5 accolades also as empty of apparent Then, through the power of Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra said this to the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara. How should any son of the lineage train who wishes to practice the activities of the profound perfection of wisdom? He said that, and the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara said this to the Venerable Shariputra. Shariputra, any son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom, should look upon it like this, correctly and repeatedly beholding those five aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Form is empty, emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form. Form is also not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, likewise, all phenomena are emptiness, without characteristic, unproduced, unceased, stainless, not without stain, not deficient, not fulfilled. Shariputra, therefore, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no compositional factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no visual form, no sound, no odor, no taste, no object of touch, and no phenomena. There is no I element, and so on, up to and including no mind element and no mental consciousness element. There is no ignorance, no extinction of ignorance, and so on, up to and including no aging and no death, and no extinction of aging and death. Similarly, there is no suffering, origination, cessation, and path. There is no exalted wisdom, no attainment, and also no non-attainment. Shariputra, therefore, because there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and dwell on the perfection of wisdom, the mind without obscuration and without fear. Having completely passed beyond error to reach the end point of nirvana, all the Buddhas who dwell in the three times also manifestly completely awaken to unsurpassable perfect, complete enlightenment and reliance on the perfection of wisdom. Therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the mantra unequal to the unequal, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering should be known as truth, since it is not false. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is declared, Tayata Om Gate Gate Paragate Parasam Gate Bodhi Swaha. Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound perfection of wisdom like that. Then the Bhagavan arose from that concentration and commanded the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, saying, well said, son of the lineage, it is like that. It is like that. One should practice the profound perfection of wisdom just as you are indicated. Even the Tathagatas rejoice. The Bhagavan, having thus spoken, the Venerable Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, and those surrounding in their entirety, along with the worlds of gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, were overjoyed and highly praised that spoken by the Bhagavan. Then extensive dispelling of hindrances according to the Heart Sutra. I and all surrounding sentient beings go for refuge to the Buddha, go for refuge to the Dhamma, go for refuge to the Sangha. We prostrate to the Great Mother, Prajna Paramita, wisdom gone beyond, surrounded by all the children and by the assemblies of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions. By depending on my prostrations to all of you, may these words of truth be actualized. In the past, the Deva King Indra dispelled the Mara evil beings by reflecting on the profound meaning of the wisdom gone beyond and reciting the profound words in daily recitation. In that same way, I also reflect on the profound meaning of the Great Mother Prajna Paramita and recite the profound words in daily recitation. May all diseases, spirit possessions, bad conditions, all negative directions, that which happens due to past karma and immediate conditions, may all this be dispelled, may it become non-existent, may it be pacified. I prostrate to the gathering of Nikinis and the 3 chakras, who abide in the holy yoga of using space. By your power of clairvoyance and magical emanation, look after practitioners like a mother her child. Akasamada Sashadara. Akasamada. Akasamada Sashadara Samaraya Tayata Gate Gate Paragate Parasangate Bodhi Soha. By the teaching of the 3 supreme jewels possessing the power of truth, may inner and outer hindrances be transformed, may they be dispelled, may they be pacified. Shanti Kuriya Soha. May all negative forces opposed to Dharma be completely pacified. May the host of 80,000 obstacles be pacified. May we be separated from problems and harmful conditions to Dharma. May all enjoyments be in accord with Dharma. And may there be auspiciousness and perfect happiness here, right now. And we'll skip over the... What shall we do? We'll skip to page 93. Page 93, the foundation of all good qualities. I'll read that. So today we'll be discussing Lama Tsongkhapa, the life and qualities of Lama Tsongkhapa. So this is one of the most important prayers composed by Lama Tsongkhapa. The foundation of all good qualities is the kind and perfect pure Guru. Correct devotion to him is the root of the path. By clearly seeing this and applying great effort, please bless me to rely upon him with great respect. Understanding that the precious freedom of this rebirth is found only once, is greatly meaningful and is difficult to find again. Please bless me to generate the mind that unceasingly, day and night, takes its essence. This life is as impermanent as a water bubble. Remember how quickly it decays and death comes. After death, just like a shadow follows the body, the results of black and white karma follow. Finding firm and definite conviction in this, please bless me always to be careful, to abandon even the slightest negativities, and accomplish all virtuous deeds. Seeking samsaric pleasures is the door to all suffering. They are uncertain and cannot be relied upon. Recognizing these shortcomings, please bless me to generate the strong wish for the bliss of liberation. Led by this pure thought, mindfulness, alertness, and great caution arise. The root of the teachings is keeping the Pati-moksha vows. Please bless me to accomplish this essential practice. Just as I have fallen into the sea of samsara, so have all mother migratory beings. Please bless me to see this, train in supreme bodhicitta, and bear the responsibility of freeing migratory beings. Even if I develop only bodhicitta, but I don't practice the three types of morality, I will not achieve enlightenment. With my clear recognition of this, please bless me to practice the bodhisattva vows with great energy. Once I have pacified distractions to wrong objects and correctly analyzed the meaning of reality, please bless me to generate quickly within my mind stream the unified path of calm abiding and special insight. Having become a pure vessel by training the general path, please bless me to enter the holy gateway of the fortunate ones, the supreme Vajra vehicle. At that time, the basis of accomplishing the two attainments is keeping pure vows and samadhi. As I have become firmly convinced of this, please bless me to protect these vows and pledges like my life. Then, having realized the importance of the two stages, the essence of the Vajrayana, by practicing with great energy, never giving up the 4 sessions, please bless me to realize the teachings of the Holy Guru. Like that, may the Gurus who show the noble path and the spiritual friends who practice it have long lives. Please bless me to pacify completely outer and inner hindrances. In all my lives, never separated from perfect Gurus, may I enjoy the magnificent Dharma. By completing the qualities of the stage and the path, may I quickly attain the state of Vajradhara. And then on page 98, we'll do the short mandala offering. This ground, anointed with perfume, strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha field and offering. May all living beings enjoy this pure land. O holy and perfect pure Lama, from the clouds of compassion that form in the skies of your Dharmakaya wisdom, please release a rain of vast and profound Dharma, precisely in accordance with the needs of those to be trained. And then the refuge and bodhicitta prayer, we recite it twice in Tibetan, twice in English. Sangye choran sogi choran janjo badu dani kyabzu chi dagye choji ji sonaki gola benjo sangye robar sho sangye choran sogi choran janjo badu dani kyabzu chi Dagi Jeju Kibet Saman, Rola Benju Sangye Rupa Shor. I go for refuge until I am enlightened through the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create for listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I am enlightened through the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create for listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. So generate a positive motivation for the teaching, thinking that whatever I do today, especially during this session, may it all become a cause to free all kind other sentient beings who are as vast as space, who are suffering in the oceans of unbearable samsaric sufferings. May it all become a cause to free them from every form of suffering, and may all become a cause to bring about the well-being and happiness of myself and all sentient beings, not only in this life, but in future lives, the happiness of freedom from samsara, and the happiness, the perfect, ultimate happiness of complete, full enlightenment. So with the bodhicitta motivation, then we can discuss the life of Lama Tsongkhapa. So this year, 2019, is the 600th anniversary of Lama Tsongkhapa, passing away. He passed away in 1419. And the actual date of his passing away is just coming up in December 21st, I believe. No, it's the 25th of this 10th Tibetan month. Ganding Nacho, we call. So there's celebrations of this, especially beginning next week in Gandhi Monastery, in exile in India, in England. So some of you from the center are going. His Holiness Dalai Lama is coming. Many monks and nuns will gather there to celebrate. So I think this is maybe the last session at the center before that happens. Anyway, so we thought this session this morning to especially talk a little bit more about the life and qualities of Lama Tsongkhapa and his teachings, and this kind of some of the special features of the lineage of, or the school or the tradition of practice and study that arose with Lama Tsongkhapa, which this center is part of, the Gelug tradition. So, yeah, there's different ways to approach Lama Tsongkhapa's life. Earlier in the year we did a retreat with using the tankas. There's 15 tankas that illustrate all the deeds of Lama Tsongkhapa's life. So that's more kind of historical, sequential way to look at, what all the things he did during his life. But I thought this morning to try to focus in on some more of the main, uncommon, important things Lama Tsongkhapa did. He showed us by his example and the things he emphasized in his writings and in his teachings. As kind of, so to help us kind of clarify what are the, as followers of Lama Tsongkhapa, as kind of participants in the lineage of teaching and practice that he established, what are the most important things for us to focus on. So one way to look at it is there's this verse of praise, a verse of prayer to never be parted and to always meet the teachings of Lama Tsongkhapa by the 5th Dalai Lama. What's the fifth Dalai Lama's name? Tenzin? Tenzin Naum? Naum Gyatso? I don't remember. Anyway, it was a prayer by the fifth Dalai Lama. Major Namtar, Major Namtar Sunday Chupela, Labshin Gyatso Chupi, Indoche. Major Namtar Sunday, Akaza. So the first, he praises Lama Tsongkhapa in 3 different ways. The first one being Major Namtar Sunday. Major Namtar Sunday for having pure morality, right? Saying Major means like amazing, it's miraculous. Major Namtar, your amazing biography, the story of your life. Major Namtar Tsambe Timdanden, you have pure tsang, or clean. Tsambe Timdanden, Tim means morality or discipline. So he's saying, he's praising Lama Tsongkhapa for his life story being one that's one when he showed incredibly pure discipline, keeping pure morality. So it's interesting to compare Lama Tsongkhapa's life. Well, because if we consider like the kind of life that Lama Tsongkhapa showed as, one way to look at Lama Tsongkhapa is as an emanation of a Buddha, right? The Buddha of wisdom, Manjushri. So then, if you look at that way, then you can think everything that he did in his life was a teaching. You know, he was doing that as a way of showing us ordinary sentient beings how to use our life well. Just like Shakyamuni Buddha, right? Shakyamuni Buddha also, actually, according to the Sanskrit scriptures, then he was actually enlightened long before, and then he, showed the aspect of taking rebirth, showed the aspect of being a prince, getting married, and then leaving the home life and becoming ordained. Those are all just kind of actions that he displayed, that he showed in order to teach us sentient beings. So it's kind of interesting that Shakyamuni Buddha, as every supreme emanation body Buddha, they showed the aspect of being a layperson at first, being a prince or a princess, the son of royalty or the child of royalty, and then leaving all of that and becoming a renunciate, practicing the Dharma. So they showed what's called the 12 deeds. Shakyamuni Buddha showed all 12 deeds. So any supreme emanation body shows these 12 deeds. So one is among the 12 deeds are learning all kind of different arts and skills like swordsmanship and archery, and learning writing and grammar, and the scriptures of all the non-Buddhist religion that exists at that time. So Shakyamuni Buddha, so Prince Siddhartha, he showed this aspect of being a layperson at first and kind of being a master of all kind of the lay person. For him, a prince's kind of activities, learning, being good at swordsmanship, archery, reading and writing, public speaking, and so forth. And then also winning the hand of he married this princess, the daughter of the ruler of the neighboring kingdom, Yasodhara. And then they gave birth to a child. But then seeing sort of all the suffering of the samsara, then he left that and became a renunciate. So it's interesting to contrast that with Lama Tsongkhapa. Lama Tsongkhapa's life, if you also consider him an emanation of a Buddha and everything he did, giving a teaching. So he took ordination from a very young age. He became a monk when he was 7 years old. So he didn't show that aspect of becoming a master of all kind of the lay worldly skills and arts, but rather he showed the aspect of just becoming a monk from when he was very young, and then keeping his ordination, keeping the pratimoksha vows of individual liberation, all the way until his death. So that's one. So that became one of the primary sort of features of the tradition that Lama Tsongkhapa established, the Gelug tradition, is that it's very clear that the best basis for practice is the life of a celibate, leading a life as a celibate person, is the best basis. But that also Shakyamuni Buddha showed that. Shakyamuni Buddha in his lifetime taught that for those who want to, really make progress on the path to liberation and enlightenment, without a doubt, then and want to invest all of their time and energy into doing that, then the best basis for practice is to give up lay life, to give up being responsible for family commitments and supporting a spouse and children, supporting your parents in old age, in their old age, and having all these social commitments and work commitments, demands on your time that go with lay life. So Shakyamuni Buddha also taught that. That's why he lived his whole life as a renunciate, from the time he left the home. And then that's why he had hundreds and thousands of his followers, both men and women, did the same thing, became ordained. And so the lineage of ordination as a Buddhist monastic and continues now in an unbroken chain until this day. So Tsongkhapa was but in Tibet, just before Tsongkhapa's time, partly because Buddhism was brought to Tibet by two different main people. Right? One is a fully ordained monk, Shantarakshita, who was an abbot of Nalanda Monastery. He came to Tibet at the end of his life. But then he was unable to, on his own, he was unable to build a monastery and start a place for Buddhist training, because the counteracting forces in Tibet, I don't know whether it was political or some kind of spirits or something, they were too strong for him to be able to start a place for study and practice of Buddhism in Tibet. So then he suggested to the Tibetans that they invite this great tantric practitioner, Guru Rinpoche, it's called, to come to Tibet. So he also came, and then together they started the first place for study and training of Buddhism in Tibet, Samye Monastery, and ordained the first group of 25 disciples. And then from there, Buddhism kind of grew and spread in Tibet. So in Tibet, right from the beginning, Buddhism, the sutra and the tantric, because Guru Rinpoche is a great tantric master, Buddhist master, great tantric yogi, like a Mahasiddha. Whereas Shantarakshita was and Guru Rinpoche was not, I don't think he was a fully ordained monk. Looks like not, because he had different consorts throughout his life in different places. Also, in Himachal, in Himachal, Anyway, he took the queen, the princess of one king there as a close student and consort, Nishi Tsogyal, I believe is her name, and then in Tibet also. So Guru Rinpoche was not showing the aspect of being a celibate practitioner, being a fully ordained monk and a celibate practitioner, but rather showing the aspect of being like a lay practitioner. So right in Tibet, from the beginning, there was this kind of these two first masters, Shantarakshita and Guru Rinpoche. They were there right from the beginning. So in the beginning of Buddhism in Tibet, there was this kind of mix of lay practitioner, the Napa tradition, with also the ordained tradition. So there became confusion in many people's minds about what's the best way to practice, or whether it's really possible to achieve enlightenment as an ordained person, or whether rather it's necessary to be a lay person and practice Tantra in that way. So, and then also, if you look at the Shakya lineage, the Sakya clan, which is the second oldest in Lima, the head of the Sakya clan is always a lay person, right? It's a patriarchal lineage that the head of the Sakya clan passes from father to son, generation to generation. So Tsongkhapa showed, one unique thing Tsongkhapa did was show the aspect of being a fully ordained monk his entire life, but also explaining and then showing the aspect of how to become enlightened. So he didn't become enlightened in that body, but in the Bardo state after he passed away, he showed the aspect of achieving enlightenment at that time in the Bardo state. So that's the kind of model he set, was making it very clear that the best basis, kind of like Shakyamuni Buddha did, making it very clear that the best basis for practice and study of Buddhism is to, of course, abandon stealing, keep the 5 lay precepts of abandon killing, stealing, lying, adultery, sexual misconduct, and alcohol. But then in addition to that, if you can, then to live as a fully ordained, as an ordained person, and also give up lay life, be celibate, and devote all your time and energy to just practicing Dharma without having responsibilities of upholding a household and of supporting family and spouse and so forth. So that's the aspect of Tsongkhapa's life that the 5th Dalai Lama is praising in the first line of that verse, when he says, Meju Namtar, your miraculous biography, Sambe Tindan Den, possessing the pure morality. Meju Namtar Sambe Tindan Babshen Gyalse, Jobe Ning Dokche. And then the second thing he praises for, so that's like, and you can think in terms of in terms of the 3 principal aspects of the path, it aligns most with the first, right? Renunciation. Renouncing, craving after and chasing after the pleasures of this life, and rather devoting one's time and energy towards pursuing the happiness of future lives, and especially liberation and enlightenment. So then the second line, Lapchen Gyalse, Jobe Ning Dokche. Lapchen means great waves of deeds, like vast deeds. So this is talking about the Bodhisattva path, vast deeds. Lapchen Gyalse means the children of the conqueror. Is an epithet for bodhisattvas. Bodhisattvas, because the conqueror is the Buddha, the Gyalpo, the king. The king in Dharma, like the king, is the most supreme figure is Shakyamuni Buddha. And then just like the prince and princess, the children of the king are in line. By birth, they have the lineage of royalty. So they're in line to become the king or the queen in the future. So just like Shakyamuni Buddha is the most supreme kind of figure, and he represents the highest level of realization in the Buddhist path, then the bodhisattvas, they're in line to, it's like in the force of their aspiration, their wish to, in order to be of the greatest possible benefit to all sentient beings, having the wish to achieve full enlightenment, then they're, through the force of that aspiration, it's like they're on the track to become a fully enlightened being, to become like the king of Dharma, a king of Dharma. So therefore they're called the children of the king, of princes and princesses. So Lapchen, and then their great waves of deeds, Lapchen Gyalse Jobe, Ning Dokche. So the activities, so saying Lama Tsongkhapa, you engage in the activities of the children of the conqueror, of the bodhisattva, with great compassion, basically, with a heart. Not only you practice pure morality, showing the aspect of practicing very pure morality, keeping the pratimoksha vows of individual liberation, not harming others. Not only you keep those very, very purely, but you also show the aspect of being compelled by great compassion. Seeing so many other sentient beings, primarily in Tibet, but also all over the world, seeing that they suffer by taking rebirth from life to life, taking rebirth and experiences old age, sickness, and death, and all the problems that one encounters in life: hunger, thirst, physical problems, sickness, relationship problems, and anger, and falling out, and being betrayed, and then also not having a sense of meaning in life, and especially chasing after pleasures that are ephemeral, that don't last, and being disappointed again and again and again, always having to chase after a new source of satisfaction and enjoyment. And then at the end of life, one dying and having no control over where our mind is going to, where our stream of consciousness goes, and then taking rebirth again and again, leading a life under the force of ignorance and confusion. So seeing sentient beings suffer in this way, and then having a deep sense of concern for them. Ning Dokche means like, in your heart, having deep in your heart a strong sense of a powerful sense of concern, and also having a strong heart, being very courageous and brave, and doing whatever is required to benefit others, right? So, so then, I mean, that's why Tsongkhapa, he could have just, you know, studied and practiced and meditated on his own, and not gone to the trouble of composing, not gone to the trouble of teaching others, right? Not gone to the trouble of composing a lot of texts, not gone to the trouble of organizing big, you know, Dharma events like the Monam Chemo, this great prayer festival in Lhasa, or where that gives so many thousands and thousands of people an opportunity to create merit and purify negative karma and so forth. So he could have just, you know, stayed as a hermit, a retreatant, you know, on his own, just meditating on his own and making progress on his own spiritual path without bothering about others. But instead of doing that, he became this very great public figure, you know, using all of his time and energy to give teachings and explanations to others, starting with just a handful, a few, and then you know, gaining more students, explaining to audiences of 10, 20, 30, 40, and then audiences of hundreds, and then by the very end of his life, giving Dharma teachings to audiences of thousands and thousands of people. So, and then also organizing, like, one of the first major kind of events he organized whereby offers people an opportunity to create extensive merit is restoring this statue, the Xingji, this famous Maitreya statue in an area called Xingji in Tibet, restoring a temple and a statue and making extensive offerings. And then every year, for many years, during the Days of Miracles, after Losar, when we celebrate and remember the Buddha engaging in a competition of miraculous powers with some non-Buddhist sort of yogis, then making extensive offerings and prayers together with whatever community he happened to be in at the time during those special days. And then that led to gradually, towards the end of his life, and about his 46th year, then holding the first great prayer festival, Monam Chemo, where, you know, thousands of people came from all the distant surrounding areas, and all the leaders of the areas, and all the wealthy people, then, as well as the ordinary people, brought together so much wealth that they had and made extensive offerings to all different Buddhas, and offered, you know, especially to the Choe statue, the famous statue of Shakyamuni Buddha, the main temple in Lhasa. And they offered butter lamps and water and incense, and thereby created so much merit. And then every day make extensive prayers and receive Dharma teachings. Tsongkhapa himself would teach every day on the Jataka tales. And then, you know, thousands of monks, like 10,000 monks or more, every day do extensive prayers. So that tradition continues down to now, to this day. Every year, like now, especially in Bodh Gaya, all the different, and that was a non-sectarian event. I mean, that time the Gelug school didn't exist. Lama Tsongkhapa was just one of many other teachers. But that was, in that event, there was, you know, monks from the Nyingma, Kagyu, Sakya tradition, and then from the kind of the Kadam or New Karapa tradition, basically, those who were beginning to follow Tsongkhapa. They all participated in that together on the prayer festival. So for years, probably up till 1959, almost every year they'd hold great prayer festival in Lhasa, and that tradition continues down to now. So now you see in Bodh Gaya, from about now until February, all the different Tibetan Buddhist traditions, the Kagyu, a couple different Kagyu Monam, so the Jonam Monam, Sakya Monam, Nyingma Monam. Nyingma Monam is the biggest. And then the Gelug monasteries have their own monasteries now. So that tradition of making extensive prayers and offerings during those special days continues down to now. So that's also something that was started by Lama Tsongkhapa. Through his, so this is it's one of the products of his great compassion, you know, his concern about how to benefit, looking at how to benefit sentient beings. And one of the great waves of his deeds, things he did to benefit sentient beings. So look at the main things Tsongkhapa did to benefit sentient beings. There are, one is just the example of his life, how he led his life. Another is his writings. His collected works consist of 18 volumes, which explain in a very extremely clear way how to practice the entire sutra and also the tantric aspect of the Buddhist path from the very beginning, correctly relying on a guru, and then meditating in a way to give up attachment to the pleasures of this life, on up to the very end, the generation and the completion stage of Tantra, and how an ordinary person actually generates the state of full enlightenment in their mind stream. He explained in a very crystal clear, very detailed way, in a way that had never been done before by anyone in Tibet or India, really. So, in his works he explains the entire path, as well as how to keep the pratimoksha vows, how to keep the bodhisattva vows, how to keep the tantra vows purely, and how to distinguish the interpretive and definitive aspects of the Buddhist teachings based on logic and reasoning. So, so one of his great deeds is composing, so many different works. Another of the great deeds of Tsongkhapa is reviving the study of pramana, of valid cognition and logic, Buddhist logic, in Tibet. So the text, and then stressing using logic and reasoning and critical thinking and textual analysis to look at all the different the sutras, the tantras that are taught by the Buddha, the commentaries on the sutras and tantras by the great Indian pundits, to look at those and compare them, do a comparative analysis in order to distinguish what is actually being said. Sometimes the Buddha taught radically different things in different places. So how to understand why the Buddha taught like that? So that's why Lama Tsongkhapa put emphasis on the graduated path, the Lamrim, the graduated path, to show how along the path it's appropriate for one kind of person to be taught something at one point, be taught something very different at a different point. And also organizing the Buddhist teachings in terms of the three turnings of the wheel. The turning of the wheel for those whose primary aspiration is just to achieve freedom from samsara. For that kind of disciple, the Buddha taught the Four Noble Truths primarily, and taught that everything has an inherent existence. And then in the second turn of the wheel, the Buddha taught that the very opposite thing, that nothing has inherent existence whatsoever. There are no inherent existent phenomena at all. The Buddha taught that second turn of the wheel primarily for bodhisattvas, those who are striving to achieve not just liberation from samsara, but have this much vaster, more powerful, altruistic attitude to achieve full enlightenment. So to those beings, the Buddha taught the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, the Heart Sutra that we just explained. And then for beings who felt kind of confused by the difference between these two turnings of the wheel, the Buddha taught the third turning of the wheel of Dharma, where he taught the mind only, the Chittamadra view, that some things have inherent existence, like the mind, and impermanent phenomena, consciousness, and ultimate reality, all do have inherent existence, but all the other permanent phenomena, other than ultimate reality, they don't have inherent existence. So there's this division of the two. So in the third turn of the wheel, then the Buddha kind of taught a middle way for those who are more mentally mature than the disciples of the first turn of the wheel, but can't accept sort of the radical rejection of any inherent existence whatsoever, as it was taught in the third turning of the wheel. So Lama Tsongkhapa clarified how to see the Buddhist teachings as fitting in these three turnings of the wheel, and thereby show how they're totally non-contradictory, but rather different kinds of teachings for different disciples of different dispositions. And then how to bring together the main teachings from all of those into one path of practice for beings. So the second deed, one of Lama Tsongkhapa's great kind of things he did was give his life example, the way he lived his life, emphasizing study at the beginning and practice at the middle, and then benefiting the Dharma by teaching and composing at the end. And then the second is by his extensive composition of Sutra and Tantra. A third major deed of Lama Tsongkhapa's life is again organizing these great prayer festivals, big monastery, restoring, rebuilding temples and holy objects in Tibet, which give people so much opportunity to create merit. And then extensively teaching, having thousands of disciples who in their own right became great scholars and practitioners, and then continued his lineage down into today. So the second, and then fifth Dalai Lama's praise of Tsongkhapa, Lapchen Gyaltse Tobing Choe. It refers more to of the three principal aspects of the path: renunciation, bodhicitta, and wisdom realizing emptiness. It refers primarily to the bodhicitta aspect, that compelled by great compassion, then Tsongkhapa he engaged in all these different activities. So, and then the third line of this prayer, Lapchen Gyaltse Tobing Deichin, Lapchen Gyaltse Tobing Deichin Chogi Nyamne Nyaljo Keys, Deichin Chogi Nyamne Nyaljo Key. Understand? Region number 3 Lapchen Gyaltse Tobing Deichin Chogi Rimni, Deichin Chogi Rimni Nyaljo Key. So then the third line is praising Lama Tsongkhapa for his tantra, for his practice, his own practice, and then teaching the path of tantra. Deichin Chogi. So Deichin is supreme. Deichin means great bliss. Choe means the supreme. Deichin Chogi Rimni. Rimni, this means the two stages, the stage of generation and completion stage. Deichin Chogi Rimni Nyaljo Ki. Nyaljo means the yoga. So he taught the yoga of, or his path of practice, you can say, that Lama Tsongkhapa's teachings, they contain this practice of the yoga, where one practices taking great bliss into the path, in two stages of the generation and completion stage. So this is, one of the important aspects of Lama Tsongkhapa's teachings, especially his composition and also his oral teaching, is that he went back to, so in all of Lama Tsongkhapa's study and writings, he always goes back to the Indian sources. Look at the actual sutras, the actual tantras taught by the Buddha, and then the ancient Indian commentaries by the Nalanda masters, such as Nagarjuna and Aryadeva, who both wrote also tantric commentaries. Nagarjuna, Aryadeva, and then other tantric masters like Saraha, Naropa, Tilopa, are some of the later Indian tantric masters. Then there's many others, I don't remember the names of. But after Lama Tsongkhapa wrote the great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment, which is showing the sutra path, it just has a little bit about Tantra at the end. Some of his main disciples requested him to write a similar text showing the stages of path, the stages of practice of Tantra. So in that, Tsongkhapa laid out how the four different classes of Tantra, Charya, Kriya, Yoga, and Mahayoga, Tantra, how they build upon one another and what are the uncommon qualities of each, and how the Mahayoga Tantras are the pinnacle of the kind of the different methods of Tantra practice, how it's the supreme among all of those and uncommon, and actually how it's only independence upon Maha-Anuttara Yoga Tantra that one can achieve full enlightenment. How actual full enlightenment is impossible without practicing Tantra in general, and it's impossible especially without practicing the highest of the four classes of Tantra. So in Ngarim Chama, the stages of the path of Tantra, Lama Tsongkhapa wrote, he started composing probably 2 or 3 years after he finished the Lamrim Chama. Then he started composing the Ngarim Chama. It took him several years to compose. So in that work, he lays out the whole path of practice of Tantra according to the 4 schools. And then later, towards the end of his life, maybe it's one of the last works he composed is the Rimna Seldrum, the lamp illuminating the five stages, which are the 5 stages of the completion stage. So this is another uncommon quality of Tsongkhapa's teachings, is he described very, very precisely how one, especially practicing completion stage practices, how one manipulates the prana, the winds in the body, and visualizes to cause the winds to enter the central channel and then release the knots at the crown, the throat, and the heart, especially the knots at the heart, and then cause the winds to enter the indestructible drop at the heart, and then use that to meditate on the generative mind, which is a union of bliss and emptiness, and thereby achieve full enlightenment. So Tsongkhapa described with incredible detail, again going back to the Tantras and the commentaries on those by the Buddha, and then also by ancient Indian masters, to give a very definitive explanation. Also, he drew a lot on earlier Indian, some of the earlier Tibetan masters, like especially Marpa, Lotsawa, and Milarepa, and then from the Shakti tradition, I'm not sure. But he drew mostly from, some of the different Heruka, Goya Samaja, primarily Goya Samaja, also Heruka Tantra and the Kalashaka Tantra. You get an explanation of those. So those are some of the main features of Lama Tsongkhapa's teaching. This, practice of pure morality, and then engaging in vast deeds to benefit sentient beings, and then showing the unmistaken path of tantric practice. But then another, especially in the sutra path, as Lama Tsongkhapa explained it, two of the most important features are that you'll see if you look at the Great Treatise on the Stages of the Path to Enlightenment in the third volume. It contains extensive description of how to generate perfect meditative concentration, single-pointed concentration. Because there are many wrong views, many mistaken ideas earlier in Tibet, probably even in India, about how do I correctly identify actual single-pointed concentration. As many people mix that up with the concentrations that belong to the form and formless realm, or with this wrong view that became very widespread in China, but was even widespread in Tibet, that you just meditate without thinking about anything. Even now, many people have this view that the ultimate kind of meditation is just to sit without, and just eliminate all thoughts. Just simply do that without focusing on anything whatsoever. So that's one kind of wrong view. Lama Tsongkhapa explained why that's incorrect. Basically because, conceptual thought, although it can lead to a lot of distractions and a lot of harm and destruction, a lot of wrong views and being bigoted, biased, and making unfair judgments, and getting caught up in anxiety and worry and fear. But also we can use the same faculty for conceptual thinking and we can use wisdom. To generate wisdom, right? To generate the correct understanding of things. So if we throw out both of those together, the ability to use like afflicted wisdom to generate all kinds of wrong ideas and bigoted, biased ideas, or disturbing thoughts and conceptions like worry, fear, anxiety. But that same kind of power of thinking we can use to generate mental clarity about what's right versus what's wrong, what's real versus what's unreal, what is an unmistake, what is the correct way to generate more peace and kindness, compassion, generosity in one's mind versus what are kind of thoughts that disturb the mind versus what are thoughts that bring more peace into the mind. So if we throw that ability for analytical, critical thinking totally out, then of course we do get rid of the disturbing concepts, but we also we undermine our ability to use critical thinking in a positive way, right? Because we throw out both together. So Tsongkhapa made it clear that that's why it's not a good idea just to sit with no thought whatsoever. Just as your main method of meditation is to eliminate thinking and sit with a mind that has no object. You're not focusing on anything. You're not thinking about anything. The main reason is really because the fundamental cause of samsara, of all suffering, is ignorance, which grasps at things as existing in a way that they don't, which grasps at things as being inherently existent, as existing from their own side, established in their own power. So if we don't generate the correct understanding to counteract that, then you can never eliminate that ignorance. So if you just sit without thinking anything whatsoever, then you'll never generate the wisdom which has the power to act as an antidote to that ignorance, which is the cause of all suffering. So you never escape from samsara, and rather you create the cause just to be like, I mean, there's many kinds of animals that just don't think, right? They just kind of have a very peaceful mind, like a jellyfish, for example. Like, they don't think about anything, they just float around in the water, you know, like, so it's very possible just by sitting without thinking anything all the time and aspiring, that your highest aspiration is just to exist without thought. You know, maybe you create karma, take rebirth as a jellyfish or a snail or something like that. So that's one wrong view that Tsongkhapa eliminated. Another wrong view, Tsongkhapa, that's common, even exists now among many people, is that actual enlightenment already exists within us, right? Which goes hand in hand with this view that we just have to sit without thought. That actually, I mean, it's true that the potential for enlightenment exists within us. You know, like you have a seed, like it's like a seed for enlightenment, like a seed of a pipal tree. It contains all the potential to have this huge tree, right? It's a very small seed. It has the potential to grow into this huge tree. So it's like all the, I mean, in our modern scientific terms, like all the DNA, the genetic makeup, the sort of blueprint for this huge structure is there, but the seed of a pipal tree is not a pipal tree. Like, it's a completely different thing. A pipal tree is huge. It has, you know, it has roots, it has a huge trunk, it has branches and leaves. Birds can sit on it, and creatures can climb up it. It can shield us from it can protect us from the sun and the rain and so forth. But the seed of a pipal tree, it can't do any of those things. Right? So it's silly to say that if you have the seed of a pipal tree, that you have a pipal tree. They're completely different things. So, but still, in the Buddhist world, many people say that actually, because we have the potential for enlightenment, like similarly, the potential for enlightenment and full enlightenment are completely different things. The potential for enlightenment is like this seed. Full enlightenment is like the fully developed tree, right? So to say that because you have the potential for enlightenment, then enlightenment is already there in your mind. All you have to do is uncover it, which is another reason that people say it's good to just sit without thinking anything at all, because the ultimate nature of your mind is the same as the nature of the Buddha, and the Buddhahood is already within. It's just obscured and covered, as if there's like, you know, as if like I had like the statue of the Buddha. Like if this statue of the Buddha is of a Tara, white Tara, but this is a Buddha, right? So as if like the potential for enlightenment is like this. It's like as if this is fully enlightenment. Full enlightenment is already there, and it's just covered by obscurations and things. So as soon as we uncover it, then the full enlightenment, it naturally just becomes manifest. So with that kind of thinking, some people think all you have to do is just eliminate concepts, and then full enlightenment, which is already there, it just becomes manifest. Or it's like you could think you have a light, you know, you have a little light in your heart, and the only reason you can't, and that is full enlightenment. The only reason you can't see it is because it has all kinds of cloths wrapped around it. So you just peel away those cloths one by one, and then once those are all peeled away, the light, it totally shines forth. But yeah, Tsongkhapa is saying, actually, what do you point to in your mind that is full enlightenment? That it's not the case. The potential for enlightenment is there, but we have to do things. We have to just, it's not just we have to eliminate thought, eliminate action, eliminate concepts, and then enlightenment will manifest, but rather we have to, we do have to eliminate destructive thoughts, but we also have to engage in constructive thoughts. We have to generate wisdom and reason, a clear understanding of what are the causes for enlightenment, and we have to gather those causes. We have to accumulate merit, we have to purify obscurations, we have to make strong prayers, and we have to study all the teachings of the Buddha that exist. Because also, if it's the case that to become enlightened, all we had to do was eliminate thinking, then why did the Buddha go to the trouble of teaching 100 volumes of scripture? Why did he go to the trouble of giving such extensive teachings over 40 plus years? Why did he teach all the sutras? Why did he teach all those tantras? Why are there so many? There's over 200 volumes of commentary on those in the Tengyur by the ancient Indian Buddhist masters. So if it's so simple to become enlightened, all that is just eliminating eliminating thought, then why did the Buddha go to the trouble of teaching so many things? It doesn't make sense. So that's another kind of wrong view. That Lama Tsongkhapa made a lot of effort to eliminate. And then another kind of wrong view is even, okay, we don't think, not necessarily eliminate concepts, but just the wrong view that, well, we just have focus on the mind, right? Just focus on the nature of the mind alone as a way of generating concentration, becoming enlightened. But there's in Tsongkhapa's explanation of how to generate correct calm abiding, or shamatha, the main thing he emphasizes is identifying subtle laxity. So subtle laxity is a kind of, it's where, we have stability. Our mind is focused on the object in a stable way such that the mind doesn't waver. There's no distraction whatsoever. The mind stays focused on the object without any effort. But there's not vividness and clarity, right? So there's a lack of clarity. But because the stability is so good, that then the mind becomes very peaceful, right? Because, now one reason in our body we feel agitation is because our mind is jumping around. So then our mind and the subtle energy in the body, they go together. So when our mind is wandering around, then the energy in our body is kind of moving around in a sort of abrasive way. And we can see the more stirred up your mind is, like when you're really anxious about something, or say you're about to take an exam, and you're thinking, you have racing thoughts about, how am I going to answer this, if I ask about that, how am I going to answer that, if I don't pass, then what's going to happen? The more your mind is racing and agitated, then the more your body also feels agitated. Your body starts to feel kind of clammy, and you can't sit still. Even when you sit still, you don't feel comfortable. You get aches and pains in the body. Like I know, even in the monastery, we have big exams as part of the Geshe studies program. Most of us, after we give the exam, we all get a little sick. Say we give an exam this afternoon, that evening, almost for me, predictable, I get a headache. I just have to go back to my room. I can't really do much, just because you've been pushing for days or weeks before the exam to try to learn and remember all this different information and have it all kind of at your fingertips so that you can give it during the exam. And then afterwards, it's like you relax, and all this kind of tension, it kind of comes out, and then you feel like you don't feel like eating, your stomach feels a little not so good, you lay down but you can't really sleep, but then you sit up but you can't really do anything because you're just exhausted, and you get a headache and your eyes hurt. And so most of the monks, we all get a little sick after exams. So that's because when the mind is also before the exam, and also during the exam, So we don't like exams. But when the mind is stirred up, then the body, it causes disease in the body, discomfort in the body. So you can imagine if your mind is completely still, say if you could focus on the image of the Buddha, focus on your own mind, or focus on your breath, and your attention just would remain there effortlessly. You don't have to make any effort to hold it there. Your attention would just remain there and be, and not waver whatsoever for 4 hours or more. That's the mark of calm abiding. How peaceful that would be, right? So it's possible you have this kind of stable concentration, and then you get this great peace, but the mind is not very vivid. There's no clarity. So because you become so peaceful and you enjoy it, you relax too much, and then it's like the full energy of the mind is not being used to be completely aware, to be vividly aware of the object, but rather the mind sinks down a little too much, sinks within, enjoying the peace of the stability, and then there's no clarity. So many meditators in ancient Tibet, they slipped into this kind of mistake of the mind being too withdrawn, too sunken down, not clear enough, and then sitting in the state of deep peace. Actually, I've spoken to some friends who've done a lot of meditation in the Goenka tradition of the Vipassana, and they say that's very common for people in that practice, is because you can get good stability very quickly, but then because of not identifying the difference between subtle laxity and correct meditation, people get caught in subtle laxity and just can spend years in this kind of subtle laxity. So one symptom of that, if you're doing that, is that the mind becomes more and more dull, right? Because you're not exercising the mind's ability to engage with something in a very vividly, clear, fully engaged way, but rather sinking and just enjoying this peace, and it dulls the mind, right? You almost think like the feeling you get if you eat too much, at lunch, and then you sit around afterwards and you get dull. That's very gross laxity, but it's on the same spectrum. So this person was telling me he meditated for I think like 9 years, very intensely in the Goenka tradition, and he was telling me that he could see his mind become more and more and more dull, and his motivation to do anything became less and less and less. He's just like disinterested in everything else around, and the only thing he enjoyed doing was just sitting in this peace of meditation. So that's one danger that Tsongkhapa made very clear how to avoid that.
Zen is also the same thing?
You can't say a whole tradition is the same thing. I don't know, in Zen tradition, if they have this, if they identify clearly this subtle laxity as a fault.
Do they concentrate on one thing, or they just sit?
The Zen tradition is not, I don't think it's not a homogeneous thing. It's not like, within the Zen tradition there's many different teachers, many different teaching and practice lineages. They're not all the same. So, and I don't know much about it anyway, so I can't really comment. But that fault might be there, some of them, I don't know. Yeah. Even some of the different Tibetan practice lineages, the fault is still probably there. Yes, I'll come around.
Yeah, so recently I had gone to His Holiness Heart Sutra session in Dharamshala. So there I met a few monks there, and they said some of their friends are meditating in Trayun.
Trayun, no.
Trayun. There are some caves or some, are Mahayana Buddhist monks itself.
Yeah.
So they said that for months they are inside that. So do they also follow the mental stability with clarity? How do you define that?
I don't know. It's up to the individual what they're practicing. I don't know. What?
The same meditation, right? So when they sit there, in a very static position and they meditate, right?
Yeah.
So do they follow, they would have a clarity, mental clarity and mental stability?
Well, just because someone's sitting still and meditating, like if you're sitting still and meditating, your question is like asking me like, what am I thinking? I don't know. I cannot see like those monks, they're sitting in a cave meditating, like I don't know what's going on in their mind. I would have to have clairvoyance to know, or I'd have to ask them and then they tell me, and then I just have to believe what they say. I can't know how they're meditating on, because there's millions of different ways to meditate, right? So, if I'm sitting here very still, it looks like I'm meditating. Just because my body is sitting like this, you don't even know I'm actually meditating. I could just be thinking about, what I'm going to have for dinner or something. You have no idea.
So you would suggest that always we have to meditate with the focus of mental stability and have a clarity, not sinking down.
Well, yes, definitely, yeah. When we meditate, we need to have focus, One characteristic of meditation is that you've decided what you're going to focus your mind on, right? And then there's placement meditation, where you just focus on one object and just keep your focus there. And then there's analytical meditation, where you decide you're going to think about an issue. Like, what is the ultimate nature of phenomena? Emptiness. So you're going to think about the meaning of emptiness. Then you analyze that. But in either of those cases, you've decided upon something you're going to focus your mind on, the object of meditation, and then you need to keep your focus on that with stability. It means your mind's not wandering off and thinking about something unrelated. And then clarity, where you're fully engaged with the object. So if you're thinking about something, the thoughts about that, they appear very clearly. If you're doing placement meditation, like you're watching the breath appears very clearly. It's not that your mind kind of sinks back, and the breath is kind of there, but you're not really perceiving it very vividly. Right? So you need to have stability and clarity. There's two. Any meditation should have stability and clarity.
Okay, so that's what Je Tsongkhapa is, saying the meditators not to get into that sinking state.
Yeah, stability was already known about, but many people didn't have a good idea of the clarity. What kind of clarity you need and how important that is. Right? They emphasize too much on just stability before. Yeah. That's why, and there was never, I mean, the section on, they call it, well, quiescence. Anyway, in the great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment, it's translated into English in 3 volumes. We have it in the library. But it's in the 3rd volume that I'm talking about, where he talks about emptiness, and before that talks about calm abiding, or how to correctly meditate, basically, how to generate meditative concentration. There they call quiescence. It's a strange translation. Usually it's translated as calm abiding. It's a translation of shamatha, or shine in Tibetan. So that's the clearest explanation you'll find in any Tibetan text about how to generate that kind of meditative concentration. And so Tsongkhapa drew from the works of like Asanga, especially in the hearer grounds, and Maitreya's commentary on, was it? Dodegyen. It's called Ornament for the Mahayana Sutras. So he drew from the text by Maitreya, Asanga, and also Vasubandhu, the Abhidharma text. So he drew from authentic Indian texts and then compiled all the different advices they gave for how to generate meditative concentration and made the most extensive and most clear presentation that's available in anywhere, really. Yeah. So that's one of the great things he did, was make it crystal clear how to generate correct concentration. So, and he did that after he also gave a teaching. He gave a teaching over, I mean, he taught this again and again and again, but especially over two or three months at one time with a group of about 1,000 disciples. He gave a teaching on based on these treatises, on the sutras and Indian commentaries, about how to generate meditative concentration. And many people actually generated very good concentration. Or what level of concentration they didn't have, it increased a lot during that time. And afterwards, he wrote Lama Tsongkhapa. Yeah. Oh yeah, as I was going around Abed and then Subhashini.
You said that it's not that the light in our heart is already there and it's obscured and we've got to remove the obscuration. And yeah, that's one way of looking at it. But at the same time, we say that the essential nature of the mind is like clear water, and all we got to do is remove the
obscurations.
The dirt in it. So how do they both come out?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, I mean, yeah, it's true that, but well, it's like this. Like, it's true that the essential nature of our mind is just, well, the mind is that which is clear and knowing, right? So, on one hand, none of the obscurations that exist within our mind are, like the disturbances that come through craving and attachment, or through anger and hostility, or through self-doubt and anguish. That none of those things are of the nature of the mind. So it's possible that they can all be, once they're all reduced and eliminated, the natural clarity of the mind is still there. But that's very different. That's very different than having, like, the capacity of the mind to know being completely manifest, being fully manifest, being fully developed. So if you consider, like, the Buddha's mind is omniscient. There's no obstacle to it knowing anything whatsoever. So it knows everything. So it's kind of like, to think about it in a visual way, it's like, where is our mind? Where's the physical location of our mind? You can't really point to one place and say my mind is there. But, like, for example, we have feeling all over our body. If I touch myself on my shin, on my arm, I know that. So it seems like there is consciousness that pervades my whole body, right? But then somebody can be doing something, even on the other side of this wall, or on the other side of this wall, where our landlord is, or below, And I don't know what they're doing, right? Whatever they're doing, as long as they do it quietly, I have no idea what's going on. So it feels like my mind doesn't extend to that space, and doesn't extend to that space down there. Although, can it or not? I don't know. But if you think, well, the Buddha's mind, though, is everywhere, then there's a sense that it extends to every space that exists. It pervades every place. So why is it that we have the sense that our mind is limited to a very narrow space, and the Buddha's mind pervades all of space? It's one way to think of it is just because our mind has these different levels of obscuration, right? The afflictive obscurations, the afflictive emotions, and then also the subtle imprints of those, and then more and more there's more and more subtle levels of imprints. So once those are all eliminated, then the potential for the mind to expand throughout all space, in a way, or to know everything, it becomes manifest, right? But that also requires merit. It's a great store of merit to create enlightenment. That's why the Buddha said practice on the Bodhisattva path for 3 countless great eons, for millions and millions of lifetimes. So, while the clear nature of our mind, though, is something already exists now, but its potential to expand to know all objects, the potential is there, but it's not something that's manifested yet. More just like the seed of this huge pipal tree we can have, but it's not manifest, right? So,
with one analogy, you're starting off with the potential, right, and having grow, like an analogy of the light, and an analogy of the clear water. You're starting off with the clear water and removing the grossness. So they're opposites.
Yeah, there are different ways of looking at the same thing. Right? They can both have, the mind can have both, can have both those properties. So its natural clarity is already there, but it's just obscured, right? But then I guess, but then the potential for that natural clarity to know more and more things, it's just a potential that it doesn't, because it doesn't actually know all those things yet. So it's just different kind of aspects of the same thing.
So won't it become diluted, like, when your mind, as per the Buddhist mind, going beyond the horizon? So there should we draw, or should we be able to analyze how much we can, broaden up, or should we limit our thoughts to know things?
What do you mean?
So you said the Buddhist mind
Yeah.
is, has the potential to,
Buddha's mind is omniscient. It knows. It has no obscurations to knowing whatsoever. So it knows everything that's possible to know. Our mind has the potential to do that, but doesn't do that yet. Sebastian?
I think one of the important aspects of realizing emptiness would be calm abiding or shamatha, because the very term calm and abiding means concentrating on one particular object.
True.
And at the same time, the whole question of the path to preparation is the ability to have uncontrived bodhicitta in the mental continuum. So there are 2 dimensions to it. From what I've learned from you all,
Yes.
there are these 2 aspects or 2 dimensions which would lead to the wisdom realizing emptiness.
You mean the 2 dimensions being the concentration on the one hand and bodhicitta on the other? It can be like that. Yeah.
It has to be like that.
Well, the 2 main things to realize are bodhicitta on the bodhisattva path, or bodhicitta, and wisdom of emptiness. And to fully realize either of those, you need concentration as a basis.
And that is why it is so rare, I suppose. I mean, if it was that easy, a lot of people would be realizing wisdom of emptiness
And bodhicitta. Yeah.
Realize that potential.
Yeah.
Involves a lot of.
I mean, just to realize emptiness, you don't need calm abiding. But then to generate, well, you mentioned the path of preparation. To generate, direct perception of emptiness, for example, you have to have calm abiding. You can't directly perceive it without calm abiding. And to generate bodhicitta, uncontrived bodhicitta, you probably need calm abiding, I think. There's a debate about it. Or uncontrived renunciation as well. That's why there's the three trainings, the three higher trainings. Higher training in morality, not harming others. Then on the basis of that, higher training in concentration. On the basis of that, higher training in wisdom. This is the main path for of the middle scope of the Long Way. For someone aspiring to, or someone aspiring to achieve liberation from samsara, this is the three main things they train in. First, pure morality, and then concentration and wisdom. So you see, like especially in the Theravada countries, where the bodhicitta and the tantra is not there. That's the main three things they focus on. Like the monks, especially, they focus very strongly on keeping all the monks' vows purely. And then they spend a lot of time not doing extensive study like in the Sanskrit or the Nalanda tradition, but spending a lot of time just doing meditation, retreat, keeping the vows purely, and then spending a lot of time doing concentration, placement meditation. And then once they achieve that, then spend more time doing analysis on emptiness, or whatever view of selflessness that they have. I know, Sadhana, you want to give us snacks?
Yeah, it's ready.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
Why don't you come first?
Okay. Then let's offer the snacks first. There's an offering prayer. On page 207. Page 207. So think of all the tea and snacks there. You could think of even any other food you're going to eat today, food and drink you're going to enjoy today. Then with the mantra, Om Ahom, visualize it becomes transformed into the nature of the Buddha's enlightened body, speech, and mind. Om Ahom, Om Ahom, Om Ahom. The Guru is Buddha, the Guru is Dharma, the Guru is Sangha also. The Guru is the creator of all happiness to all Gurus. I make this offering. May we and those around us and all future lives be separated from the three jewels, continuously make offerings to the three jewels, and receive the inspiration of the three jewels, to the Supreme Teacher, the precious Buddha, to the Supreme Refuge, the precious Dharma, to the Supreme Guides, the precious Sangha, to the Triple Gem, the object of refuge, I make offerings. So then enjoy.